Okay. Zok the Heilige Gemara. Amar Ravashi. Ravashi taught us that there's difference between a halala and a zoina, as a halala only comes from an iser kahuna, a zoina comes from a regular iser of joining. So Amar Bashi Hilchach. Therefore, Kohen habalach, I say, a Kohen who has znus with his sister, meaning he was over an iser of ishus, but not an iser kahuna, because a choisai is not a specific iser kahuna. It's an iser for anybody. Zoina mashfala, she becomes a zoina, but chalala mashfala because she was not over an iser of kahuna. Chazur bala, if he's bala again, or if anybody else is bala, because any other kohen is bala, so anyone who's bana zoina, also chalala, that makes her into a chalala. Ritva asks over here. Before I mentioned Ritva, let's go a little bit weiter. Rabbi Yehuda, Kohen Gadol B'Almana Loikeshtein.
The reason is because the Zoina is also a Kohen.
Correct. A Zoina is only a Kohen. That's why if a Kohen lives with the Zoina, it makes her into halal. A regular person is allowed to marry a Zoina. Right? If a woman was novellis by a goy, or if a woman was novellis by someone who's osir law, that doesn't make her osir to a Yisrael, but it only makes her osir to a Kohen. Rabbi Yehuda, Kohen Gadol B'Almana. If a Kohen Gadol has relations with an almana, Leikestein, he'll actually get malchus because he was over to Yisrael. Achas mishum loikach, right? Almana grusha v'chalol zoynes el loikach. And then the pasuk says v'lo yichal zari b'amav. He's also making chilul. Achas mishum lo yichalel. Oh, so I apologize. Lo yichal, not lo yichal zara. La yichalel, because he's making her herself into a halala. Remember, we learned the drasha lo yichalel. He should have been mechal someone who up until now was kosher, and he's causing her to become also. So there's two isurim here. He's also making children that are halalim. He should get a third set of malchus as well. And for the Gemara, he wasn't gomer his bia, and therefore, although it's a bia lagabi a bia hasura, it's not a bia that can lead to having children. As Rashi says, the lack of chilul zera, merely by putting his aver in a little bit, the shalom what hara is, that will already be mechalal her because it's considered a bia, but it's not a bia that can lead to having children. Kitam biyavamas. I understand. So it could have also said that she didn't conceive, but it could be a gemar bia is his action to make him be over. That's his ma'aseh. Just having the baby itself is not his ma'aseh. His ma'aseh towards it. No, but that's what he would get the malchus for. No, it's puravu. You're not makayim puravu until the baby's born. But the ma'aseh that you do to be makayim the mitzvah happened way back when. So
makayim if you didn't have the baby.
No. But the Gemara is asking he should be over because of if he ends up having a baby. But the mice is still only if there's a gemar bia. So even if there's no pregnancy, it will be considered chilul zara. Who does he bring it down from? The Kiddush. Well, that's a very big Kiddush. Okay. So Duvi's Kasha brought a very important halach that is a Israel chal zara even if there's no pregnancy, but it has to be a bia haroyu l'chilul zara. Based on that, the Ritva asks Akasha, why is it that the Gemara says a moment ago that if a Kohen has beer with his sister, he makes her into a Zoina, not into a Halala? Why did you say that the Hara makes her into a Zoina and the Gemara beer makes her into a Halala? So with one beer, she could become a Zoina and a Halala. Why was it necessary that it has to be a second bia? Why does it have to be chazer or bola? That's what the Ritva asks. If we're saying that the beginning of the bia is a bia in and of itself to be mechaler, and the end of the bia is also called a bia, l'gabi lo yichalel, So why don't you say that in one bia he makes his sister Kohen, who was born his sister, makes her both into a zoina and a halala? The Gemara, the chilas bia should make her into a zoina, and the soy bia should make her into a halala. There's a lot of Torah about it, like if someone makes a Gemara bia, it's a raya that the Tosha discusses. If someone made a Gemara bia, it's a raya that he wanted to be Kohen with the soy bia. So if he makes a Gemara bia, we look at it like it was all one bia. Because that's the Gemara weiter. Masav Rava, Almana ugrusha. What if someone is born a woman who's both an almana and a grusha? Loika mishum shnei shemis. He's going to get malchus for two shemis. My love, shnei shemis. The sulai. It would be two shemis, meaning for almana and for grusha, but not for the lo yichal. So shnei shemis alzeh u'shnei shemis alzeh. It means for the almana there'll be an iser lo yikach and lo yichalel, and for the grusha as well there'll be an iser of lo yikach and lo yichal. So it's two, which is really times two, which is four. Grusha v'chalutza. If someone had bia with a woman who is both a grusha and a chalutza, eino chayav elo mishum achas. I believe the Aleph says. Zok to Gemara, no, hachi kamar. Eino chayav elo alachas. He's only mechuyev for the grusha, not for the chalutza, but ula olam shnei shemos. But avada in the grusha, he's mechuyev sai for the lo yikach and sai for the lo yichal. Frek the Gemara of chalutza darabanan. You're saying he doesn't get malchus for the chalutza. Are you telling me chalutza is only also to a kohen midrabanan? Vatanya we learned grusha. It says v'isha grusha me'isha lo yikach only ala grusha. Chalutza minayi, and how do we know that a chalutza is also to a kohen? Habalamer ve'isha gerusha me'isha. That extra vav is marba a chalutza as well. So you see, it's midaraisa. We learn it from the vav of isha. So no midrabanan. Really, the only iser for a kohen to marry a chalutza is midrabanan. Ukra asmachta ba'alma. That vav isn't really a drasha. It's just an asmach. Okay, so we learned a new thing, that a chalutza is also to a kohen, but it's only midrabanan, and therefore it wouldn't create any type of chilul. Rabbi, kidesh loika. If someone makes Kiddushin, Rashi says kohen gadol, a kohen hedget, and who was he mekadesh? Achas min apsulo samur espinyan. So it's a kohen gadol to an almana or a kohen hedget to grusha. If he merely made Kiddushin, he will get malchus for the Kiddushin alone. And and if he makes a bia, he gets a second set of malchus. Kiddush loika mishum lo yikach, as Rashi says, Kiddushin mashma sheheina kohen oisa. Kicha is Kiddushin. Baal loika mishum lo yichalel. Rashi says Baal acher Kiddushin loika. I'm sorry, that's weiter. And Baal, he gets one malchus because of lo yichalel. The chilul occurs by the bia. That's Abayi's shita. Each act, the Kiddushin, the bia, the two independent acts. For Kiddushin, you get lo yikach, and for the bia, you get a lo yichal. Rav Amar, they're intertwined. Baal loika loy baal eno loika. Even if you make a Kiddushin, you're not going to get malchus for the Kiddushin unless you make bia as well. If you make bia as well, you will get malchus both for the lo yikach as well as for the lo yichalel. But without bia, you won't get any malchus at all. You get two. Because if you make a Kiddushin and a bia, you get two malchus. But if you make a Kiddushin and no bia, you don't get any malchus at all. So Baal loika, loy baal eno loika. Why? Mishum dechsev lo yikach v'lo yichalel. Ma tam lo yikach mishum lo yichalel. The only type of Kiddushin that's also is a Kiddushin that's going to lead to lo yichalel. So therefore, before the bia occurs, there's no trigger for the isser even on the kiyah. Let's see Rashi. Baal loika, Baal acher Kiddushin, then loika shtay. But loy baal eno loika afilu achas. You need a bia to trigger any isser. Umayda Abaye, but Abaye agrees to Rava that there is some interconnection b'machzor grushasai. There's an isser of machzor grushasai. Someone divorces his wife, she remarries somebody else, then that marriage doesn't work out. Now he goes back and marries her again. Shem kiddush v'loy baal. There, that Kiddushin, even Abaye agrees, she'ena loika. Why? Because the pasuk says beferish. The pasuk there links the Kiddushin to the bia, because the pasuk says, Valeka. It has to be aliyos loyli isha, which means bia. Zot Rashi moida bai afal gab the mechayiv malchus al kedushin v'isha kahuna hacha dafka by kahuna the kol chad v'chad lav bam pein after. Each lav is independent. V'loy tala kosov as zeh bozeh beferish. The Torah didn't beferish link the two lavin. They're two independent lavin. He argues on Rava, but Abaya holds by Yisra Kahuna to an independent lav. Avol Yisrael amachsu grushosim mishanisis la'atar v'nes armelo in his garsha afal gav dechsiv lo yuchal loshuv lekachta, which is an Yisra Kiddushin, the hainu asor shloika chena. There Abaya is moidahu the ene loika achi boil. There has to be a bia, and if there's no bia, there's not even malchus for the Kiddushin. The behedya tolo rachmana Kiddushin bebia. There the Torah specifically says it has to be a Kiddushin of bia, because the Torah says lakachta liyos loyli isha. Even the kicha who Kiddushin liyos loyli isha is referring to the isha's shalbia ka'amar, because we know liyos loyli isha. We learn whether or not Kiddushin is type sometimes from Havaya, but Zok Rashi in a case where the pasuk beferish uses the word kicha, there the liyos loyli isha must mean bia. So since the Torah specifically links the two, there Abai would be moida that there would be no malchus for the Kiddushin unless there was a bia. But by Kiddushin, each lav is independent. Umoida Rava, and Rava agrees, the Kohen Gadol ba'almana. The Kohen Gadol in almana, she'imboal v'loy kiddush, if the Kohen was boil the almana and didn't have any Kiddushin, shaloike, he would get malchus anyway, because v'loy yichal zari ba'amavam rachmana, Barehu chila. Zokta shemoide Rava. Avagav the boy be isakuna tarti. Even though you need both by isakuna, dafka bia acha kedushin who the boy that kedushin lechudayu leilok. All Rava said is you don't get malchus and it's lav dafka amon lekohen gadol. It's all of the shuri kahuna. It's there. The Torah says you don't get malchus unless there was a bia, but you would get malchus for a bia even though there was no kedushin. Avobol v'lakadosh. Moidahu shabeila ain't tluy b'kedushin. The loichal omer achmana barechilo. There will be a chilel even without kedushin. So when Abai is arguing a Rava, he's just saying you don't get malchus for the kedushin unless there's a bia, but you surely get malchus for the bia even though there's no kedushin. Ushnei moidim, and both Abai and Rava agree the machzor grushasoi should involve a loy kiddush if someone was boil his ex-wife but was not mekadosher she'eina loy. There's surely no malchus because the Torah specifically said derech likuchen osra Torah. The Torah only said the isser of machzor grushasoi is if there's a marriage. If there's just a casual encounter, I don't know if that's a mitzvah, but it's not the isser that the Torah is talking about by machzor grushasoi. U'shnei moedim b'machzor grushasoi afal pi shel divrei shneim kohen b'psula loyka alpia v'loy kedushin. Everybody agrees that a kohen marrying or living with a woman that's usher to him, even if there's no kedushin, there's only bia. Both Abai and Rava agree there's malchus there. Moedim mein b'Yisrael amachzor grushasoi mishanisis she'involve a loy kiddush she'ein loyka because derech likuchen osra Torah ala bia loy paret lav. There's no lav stated specifically for the bia. El al yidei likuchen de lo yuchal loshav lakach tuksiv. Okay, that clarifies that. Now we're going to get into the halacha of Gera. If we are speaking about a kohen. No, but by machzor grushasoi, anybody is covered by the isser of machzor grushasoi. Right? The machzor grushasoi mishanisis is a lav for anybody. Frankly, a kohen can't marry his wife even if she was a nisis, because a kohen may not marry a grusha, even his own grusha. Okay, so let's see the Heilige Gemara weiter. So before we do the Gemara, I just want to make an inventory of the different sheets that we had in the Mishnah, so that we're prepared for what the Gemara is about to explain. I want to just turn back to the Mishnah for a minute, and let's go to the three sheets of the Mishnah, and there'll be a fourth as well. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Bas ger zachar kebas halal zachar." So Rabbi Yehuda says, if a ger marries a bas Yisrael, their daughter is psula lekahuna, right? Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is mekel, and he says no. Yisrael shenasa Giyores, bitay Kshera L'Kahuna, the Ger Shenosa Bas Yisrael, B'Tay Kshera L'Kahuna. If one of the two parents are Jewish, from birth, that child is Kshera L'Kahuna. So Rabbi Yehuda says the father has to be Jewish. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says it doesn't matter if the father or the mother was Jewish. Either way, that girl will be kosher. No, but Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov agrees. But if both parents are not Jewish, are not born Jewish, then bita psula l'kuna. So that's the second shita. And the third shita is Rabbi Yosy Omer af ger shenasa Giyores bita ksher l'kahuna, who is not mutar l'kahuna. A girl who was born not Jewish, and she became Jewish later on, because then she could be a Zayna, right? So we're going to soon see there's a fourth shita as well that holds that even if she became Jewish after she was born, as long as she became Jewish before she was 3 years old, she will still be kosher l'kul. So we're actually going to have four shitas, and we need to understand where these four shitas come from.
That's what we have to know.
We're going to see. We're going to see about that. The Gemara is going to discuss that as well. Zok to Gemara. Zok to Hela Gemara. To analyze, we're going to start off with Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda Basker Zocher Kabas Chalal. So again, if the mother is Jewish from birth, the father is a ger, that daughter, the daughter that they have, will be psula l'kuna. Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Omer Basker Zocher Kabas Chalal Zocher. Vadin Noisen. Where do I get it from? I get it from Svara. Ma Chalal, Madach Chalal. Shabba mitipa kshera bita psula. A halal, he was born from a tipa kshera. His father and mother are both ksherim. And the vera might have been done while he was conceived, but the tipa is a tipa kshera. Nevertheless, bita psula. This is going according to the Madamar that a male halal, even if he marries a regular kosher Bas Yisrael, the daughter is still considered a halala. So ger shabba mitipa psula. This ger, who his conception is from a tipa psula, his father was a goy, his mother was a goy. Einay din shabita psula. Surely he should be worse than the halal, and therefore, if the halal's daughter is pasul, his daughter should be psula as well. I'm sorry.
Bas Yisrael is a mitzvah b'chulot, so there's no avayda here b'chlal.
Yeah, Zok Gemara, mal halal, maybe halal is worth. The fact is, the chalal was created through an avera. A ger was not created through an avera, so maybe therefore a ger shouldn't be as bad as a chalal. Zok Gemara, being created with an avera doesn't matter. How do I know? Because Kohen Gadol b'almana yochiach. The Kohen Gadol himself was not created with an avera. Shein yitzirasa b'avera. The Kohen Gadol, his parents didn't do an avera when he was conceived. Nevertheless, bita psula. So you see, Yitzirasa Ba'avera isn't a mila to affect the Bita Psula. In fact, the more Malachain Gadol, she can be also Ba'avera. His own Bia was Ba'avera. That's why his daughter is a Chalal. So Dr. Mura, Chalal Yachiach. A Chalal, there was no Bia Ba'avera. The Chazar Adin, Loi Reizah Kareizah. The Almana, the Gadol Almana does not have Yitzirasa Ba'avera. And the Chalal does not have the Osa Bavera. Hatzara Shavush Shabehen. What does the Halal and the Kohen Gadol Balmona have in common? She'einayin B'roi Vakol. They're not typical. She'chalukin Mishar Kahal. They each have a difference. One has Yitzirose Bavera, one has Biose Bavera, but what they have in common is they're not typical. On the other, yes, a ger, I might as well throw a ger into that same group. It's also not a typical situation, who therefore will be type su. So that is the first attempt at finding a reason why the daughter of a ger, Shenosa Bas Yisrael, is psula l'kum. There's a taravera by the Alman L'Kohen Gadol, the bia in which this daughter was conceived is a bia shalavera, and the halal on the Bas Yisrael, the halal was conceived through an avera. But by a ger, there's no avera here at all. So who said bitoy should be psula l'kuna? Zok Gemara, you're right. Let's pull a Kohen Gadol Balmana out of the equation, and let's say Ema Mitzri Risha in Yochia. So originally the Gemara wanted to say, Madech, if a bas halal is psula, surely a bas ger should be psula. The Gemara asked, no, a bas halal was yitziras bavera. Zok the Gemara, mitzri yachiach, a mitzri rishon that married a mitzvah rishon, there's no avera there at all. A mitzri rishon is allowed to marry a mitzvah rishona. That's who he's supposed to marry. Yet his daughter is still psula to Klal Yisrael. Now, the Mitri is a little different because the Mitri is not a Kahuna Isser, it's an Isser Lakol. But you still see that in that even though there's no Avera done, the daughter is still Azar. That's a much different Avera. It's a much different type of prohibition. That's a Kahal Isser. That's not an Isser Kahuna. They're different. Ubite psula, and their daughters are psula. Afan the obvious ager. So too, if a ger marries a bas Yisrael, his daughter she'ena beroiv kol. That's not typical. Ubas ubite psula. Zok Gemara mala tzara shavush ben, which is a halal and a mitzri shekain poislim b'viyosan. There be apostles, but the be of a ger does not pass. Zok Rashi. Poislim b'viyasan as isha mina kahuna. If a cholo is boil a lady, that lady is posel mina kahuna. If a mitri is boil a lady, a mitri sheni, that posel ser kahuna. Kiditanya leil bepirkin ben teshanim v'yamechad geramoni umayavi. There's a whole list of people who posel a woman b'viyasai. Plenty of ger sheni posel b'viyasai. A regular ger who's boil a lady, she does not become psula l'chuna. She doesn't become a zayin. So I bezoi mehechatesa that the daughter of a ger should be pasal l'chuna. Zok to Gemara, you're telling me that a ger who's boil a lady doesn't pasal her for kahuna? Maybe he does. Rabbi Yehuda ger nami pasal b'viyasoi umaisila b'ma'atzad mahadina. The same way he learns that a ger pasals his daughter from kahuna. From that same place, he will learn that the ger apostles a woman, a bas Yisrael, who is boil from kahuna as well. So now Rabbi Yehuda's chumer became bigger. Because now Rabbi Yehuda's chumer is a ger who has relations with a bas Yisrael. Not only is his daughter psula l'kuna, this woman who he was boil also becomes asura l'kuna. Okay, gewaltig. Now we have the understanding of the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara now is going to explain the other two shittas in our Mishnah, as well as introduce us to the fourth shita and explain that as well.
Okay. Lemasa, from where does he learn?
From a Mematzino. He learns it from a Mematzino. Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov Omer, Ger. So Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov said, if either parent was Jewish, it wouldn't be a problem. Tanya we learned, and then we had Rabbi Yosy, who held even if both parents aren't Jewish, it could still be mutar l'kuna. Tanya Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai Omer, Giyores chusa mibas shalosh shanim v'yamechad sher l'kuna. So Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai is the most mekel, and he holds even if both her parents were not Jewish, she is still sher l'kuna if she became a Giyores when she was less than 3 years old, and we can assume she's still a basula. Shenemar, it says by the Mijonim, after they captured the Mijonim, they had to kill many of them, and some of them they let live. So who did they let live? It says, V'cholataf b'noshim hachyulachem. The minor women allow them to remain alive. Why would they remain alive? They would remain alive because they would be able to be, it says lachem. Lachem means that you'll actually be able to marry them. Amongst the group of Yidden that the Torah was being matter these women to for marriage was Pinchas, who was a Kohen. And therefore, you have a raya from here that even though she was born a Goyta, but she became a Giyores before she was 3 years old, she's muter l'kahum. That is how Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai knows this a lot. The Rabbanan hold that a Giyores will not be muter to a Kohen at all. It doesn't mean lachem, you can use them and you can marry them. It means you can use them as avodim and shvachos, but avad you can't marry them. So there's no raya from this pasuk that a Giyores would be mutter l'kuhun. V'chulon mikra kedosh. All of these four shitas darshan it from one pasuk. Now, of course, Rabbi Yehuda already has a makar from a Memetzino. So this pasuk will just be like an asmachta to him. And the pasuk that we're bringing a raya from is from Yecheskel. It's not from Mishal from Shetoyer. And according to Rabbi Shimon ben Yosy, we also have a shtickle raya from the story of the Midyanim. He already proved from this pasuk that even a Giyores is mutter to a Kohen if she became a Giyores when she was less than 3 years old. So really, the two shitas that are going to have the real makar from this pasuk are going to be Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov and Rabbi Yosy in our Mishnah. So let's see what it is. It says Almana Grusha lo yikchu lahem lanoshim ki im besulais mizera beis Yisrael. Let's look at the pasuk inside in Yecheskel itself. Almana Grusha lo yikchu lahem lanoshim ki im besulas mizera beis Yisrael. This very much sounds like we're talking about a Kohen Gadol. Would you not agree? Because it says in Almana Zoser. The Almana Asherti Almana mi Kohen yikchu. And an Almana, who's the Almana of a Kohen, they could marry. Who could marry an Almana from a Kohen? And who cares who her first husband was? So the Gemara is going to dash in this passage.
This is one of the reasons that he hid in the Biden. Because
who are you talking about? Who hid?
In Sefta Shabbos, that the Cheskel Rebbe, they made the 18 things because of this one of the secret this project.
Okay. So Zaktim V'chul Mikra Chadar Almana Ugrusha La Yikchu Lahem Lanachim Kiyim Besulais Mizera Beis Yisrael. If you Savar, it says Mizera Beis Yisrael. Who's allowed to marry a Kohen? Someone Mizera Beis Yisrael. Rabbi Yehuda Darshans Ada is Kol Zera Yisrael. All of the origins of the child has to be from Yisrael. We just said a moment ago, even Rabbi Yehuda agrees that if the father is Jewish and the mother's gay, Giyores, she's mutter l'kuna. Why is that Kol Zera Yisrael? So Rashi says, and once again, it's a man's world. Kol Zera means Kol Iker Hakari Zera. The main Zera has to be mi Yisrael, Hainim in Av, Afuki Basker. So that's how Rabbi Yehuda learns that the father has to be Jewish. Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov, Savar, mi Zera, Bafil Mikta Zera. As long as part of the Zera of this child is mi Yisrael, whether the mother was a Yisraelis or whether the father is a Yisrael, the child will be mutter l'kun. Rabbi Yosy Savar, Mishenizru be Yisrael, as long as when the child was conceived, her parents were Jewish. So therefore, even a ger, Shanasa Giyores, and they had a daughter, she's called Nizru be Yisrael because she was conceived when her parents were already Jewish. And Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai Savar, Mishenizru Besula be Yisrael. It's enough if when her Besulim were completed, which is when she becomes 3 years old, as long as at that time she was a Yisrael. So that covers all of the four shitas. So just to review, so we have them clear in our head, Rabbi Yehuda said the father has to be Jewish. Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov says any one of the parents have to be Jewish. Rabbi Yosy says even if they're both Giyorim, as long as they're Jewish at the time that the child is conceived. And then Rabbi Shimon Yechayu says even a girl who was born not Jewish, as long as she was Megayer before she became 3 years old, she's allowed to marry a Kohen. Rab Nachman l'Rav. Rab Nachman told Rav, Hi Kro, let's look at this pasuk. It's a little bit confusing. Reisha b'kohen gadol, v'sefer b'kohen hedjit. Because the Reisha says you're not allowed to marry a Kohen. An almana cannot marry a Kohen. And at the end it says an almana mikohen you could marry. So it must be speaking about a Kohen hedjit. Amalayin, that's exactly what it is. The beginning is speaking about a Kohen gadol, and the end is speaking about a Kohen hedjit. Frank, the Gemara ukra, because of krachi, is that how psukim normally act? They just change subjects smack in the middle with absolutely no introduction or warning. Zakt Gemara, hachi amalei. The ksiv krachi amalei told me, yeah, it works, and I'll give you an example of a different pasuk where once again the subjects gets changed in the middle of the pasuk without any warning. The ksiv, it says v'ner lakim termich, before the light of Hashem burnt out, which is referring to before Eli HaKohen died. Shmuel shoichev b'heichel Hashem. Shmuel was lying, was resting, was sleeping in the Heichel of Hashem. And Frag the Gemara, how could Shmuel be lying in the Heichel Hashem while Eli is still alive? while Eli is still alive, Shmuel does not yet have a status of Melech Yisrael because Eli is still alive. If he doesn't have a status of a Melech Yisrael, only the leader has a right to sit down in the Azara. So how could Shmuel have been lying in the Azara, in the Heichal Beis Hashem, while Eli was still alive? Ella, you have to chop the pasuk up, and you have to say, Elaner Elokim Terem Yichva Heichal Hashem, before Eli died in the Heichal, Ushmuel Shoichev, not Heichal Hashem, Ushmuel Shoichev b'Mkaimai. So you read the pasuk chopped up. When Elokim Terem Yichva is going on Eli, Ushmuel Shoichev is going on Shmuel, sleeping not in the base of Mikdash, in his own bed at home, and Behechel Hashem is going back at the beginning of the pasuk of the V'ner Elokim Terem Yichva. So you see the Torah switching back and forth from Eli to Shmuel without any announcement. So you see the pasuk does such things. So don't altatama that the pasuk by Almana is starting off speaking about an Almana l'Kohen Gadol, and in the end of the pasuk it's referring to a Kohen Gadol.
Anyway, a problem because he wasn't from Malchus Ba'adu.
I guess he's considered a melech. Eli was neither melech, right?
He wasn't.
Eli was a kohen.
Right. That's the stretch of the
Okay. Break the Gemara. Dafka, if she's an almana from a kohen, mikohen in Yisrael, as far as we know, an almana from anybody is mutter to a kohen. The Gemara hachikamar. Mikohen yikhu, meaning mishar kohanim yikhu. When the pasuk says "Valmanu grusha la yikchu lahem lanashim," ki mesulos mizera beis Yisrael, and then it's "Valmana shatia almana," any almana, "Valmana shatia almana," mikoyin from the other kohanim yikchu. So it's not almana mikoyin read together. It's "Valmana shatia almana," an almana that becomes an almana. Mikoyin from the other kohanim, not from the kohanim gedolim, from the other kohanim yikchu, they could marry them. Tanya mihachi mikoyin yichu mishar kohanim yichu. Other kohanim besides the kohen gadol may marry an almana. Rabbi Daimer min hamasiyin lekahuna yichu. They could marry from people who are allowed to marry kohanim. Rashi says min hamasiyin lekahuna almanas adam sheroyu lahasi biti lekahuna yichu. Whose almana may a kohen marry? An almana of a man who this man's daughter would have been mutter l'kahuna. So whose almana may you not marry? Whose almana may a kohen not marry? So Rashi l'mutei almanas ger. For Rabbi Yehuda l'tamei, Rabbi Yehuda holds the almana of a ger you wouldn't be able to marry. How do we know that? Because Rabbi Yehuda we know holds that the daughter of a ger you're not allowed to marry, right? Rabbi Yehuda holds the daughter of a ger you're not allowed to marry. That's what we learned earlier, and therefore Rabbi Yehuda l'tamei damar bas ger zachar kevas chalal zachar. You're not allowed to marry the daughter of a Yisraelis married to a ger. And there's another rule. The other rule is kol shat noise bitoi at noise almanos. Which almana are you allowed to marry? You're only allowed to marry the almana of a man that his daughter would have been kosher l'kahuna. But vibalt, this man was a ger, and therefore you cannot marry his daughter. You can't even marry his almana. So when it says the almana shati almana mikayin yitchu, means an almana who's an almana of a man who his daughter would have been mutter l'kahuna. Only such an almana is a kohen allowed to marry. But if she is the almana of a man whose daughter would not have been mutter l'kahuna, for instance, her first husband was a ger, then she will be usher to a kohen. Zok the Gemara, Rabbi Yosy Omer, afger. And as a matter of fact, that's what we learned at the end of the sugya on Amud Aleph as well, that through the Memetzinu, we also learn that he will answer a woman, a ger will answer a woman who is boil from Kuhn. Rabbi Yosy Omer of ger shenatza Giyores. Even a ger shenatza Giyores, their child is muteris l'kuhun. Amar of Hamnuna mishmei de'ula. And Chaim wants to know who he passed like, so now the Gemara discusses. Halachic Rabbi Yosy, we pass like Rabbi Yosy, that even if both parents are Giyores, the child is mutter l'kahuna. But the child who was born a goy and became a Giyores, she will be also l'kahuna. If she's a Giyores, she's also l'kahuna, unless she was born Jewish, right? That's what she did. She had to have been born Jewish, right?
Because she's a Giyores. Because she's a
Giyores, right? V'chein Amar Rabba Bar Chana, halacha Rabbi Yosy, meaning a Giyores is asur l'kahuna. Umiyom shechar beis hamikdash nahagu kaihanim silsol be'atzmon Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. From the Churban beis hamikdash, the kaihanim were more makmer, and they were makbid that at least one of the parents should have been Jewish in order for them to marry such a girl. Amar Rab Nachman, Amar Lihuna, Bali Malach. If you're asking a Rav, may I marry this girl? They'll tell her, do not marry a girl unless one of her parents were always Jewish. But Nasa, if he already married a girl who had no parents that were Jewish, meaning she's the daughter of a couple that are both Gerim, Ein Maiti Noisem Imenu, Kreb Yosy, Avada, we wouldn't suggest that he should be Megarish's wife. We tell him to stay together. Here you have a father who loves his son. And he says, my son here, he's a mamzer. And of course, the case is, a man comes to town with children, and he points to his son. This son of mine happens to be a mamzer. Right? Maybe he had illicit relations, and son was born from there, but there's a son here standing, and he's saying he's a mamzer. The father has no nemonos to say that. So now we are changing cases. What if there's a husband and a wife, and the wife is pregnant, and both the husband and the wife agree that this baby is her husband is not the father. This baby came from his nus. That the child is a mamzer. Let's see Rashi. The reason why the father is not believed to say his son is a mamzer, the karaf who atzla, he's related to him, and therefore he's not nemon to say edus on his son. Meaning nevertheless, they're not believed.
It's not a mamzer until there's kosher edus to be mamzer.
Or unless I guess so, unless we know there was his nose. Unless we know there was his nose, yeah. But that's the first sheet. That's the first sheet. Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Yehuda holds the arbel. But yeah, I guess not according to Rabbi Yehuda, to make someone into a mamzer will require some serious edim. Because the question is, even if there's edim of his nose, that's edim of his nose, and know that the Baal wasn't with her afterwards. Because if the Baal was with her afterwards, this child belongs to the person who she was chayv chorus with, or misa with. But let's say she's an eshes. If she's an eshes, it's not a problem. It's not that she was a mizana, and let's say he separated from her afterwards, then it'll be obvious that this child will be a mamzer.
But what's a kid who's been born out of wedlock? Not like
100% kosher. 100% kosher. Yeah. And if his father is very rich, he's a mulf kosher b'yuch. Sag to Gemara weiter. My ve'afilu shneim. What does it mean ve'afilu shneim? What's the difference if you have one pasal aid or two pasal aid? Sag to Gemara lemi boyka. Loi mi boy ihu. The loikim it's pashut that the father or the husband here, he doesn't know exactly what happened. He might not even have been there when this child was conceived. So it's pashut that he's not believed. He doesn't have the facts straight. The Kimla, she surely knows who fathered this child. Even she, loy mehemna, she's not believed because it's not about whether they would know or not. They have known them.
if he was never there, how did she become pregnant?
That's the whole point. She was with somebody else.
If he says edus, I wasn't with my wife for the past several years. Why is that enough?
Because he doesn't have an amongst. The problem is he doesn't have an amongst. He might know that, but he doesn't have an amongst. He's correct.
It's not because of that. Like Kiblay is actually a raya that it's.
I hear because he's an ish. I hear. Okay. Let's finish the daf first. It's pashut when in the first case of the Mishnah where a man comes with a person. Everyone is assumed to have a chesed kashrus. Now he wants to say this son is a mamzer. There it's pashut that the father doesn't have an amonus to make a son to a mamzer. The loy mehem. Elafilu uber nami. Even in the case of uber, where before the baby is born, the baby does not have a chesed kashrus yet. So maybe there he should have an amonus. Elafilu uber nami. The less lecheskes chazaka the kashrus. Still, the parents are not believed because they don't have an emunus. Rabbi Yehuda holds they are believed. Kiddushin, like we learned in the Brisa, it says, "Ki es habechor ben asnua yakir losses lepishnayim." Yakir yakirenu la'acherim. He could identify his child, his bechor, even for other people. Bikan Amar Rabbi Yehuda. From here, Rabbi Yehuda said, "Neman adam loymar zeh b'ni bechor." This is my child who's a bechor. Chashem sheneman adam loymar zeh b'ni bechor. The same way the Torah gave a person in the manas to identify that a son is a bechor. Tak neman adam loymar zeh ben gerusha v'zeh ben chalusa. So you might ask, that's a stretch. Just because he's neman to say that this is my child, a bechor, why should that give him an amanas to passel him? Tosfos answered that kasha a couple of blot ago, which we'll visit in a second. They just want to finish first. He is not believed. And that's the same shiloh in our Mishnah. I understand, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that's why the Torah says yakir, to give him an amanas to determine if his child is a mamzer or ben grusha mechalutza. Why did the Torah have to say yakir? Yakir lomali. He can just give the child whatever he wants. Why does bechayra require any type of namanas? So the Gemara, the teretz is tzarchakera. Maybe it's speaking. Those people will know the becharas. Why do I need a special namanas? People know it's the firstborn. So the Gemara, no, but tzarchakera, it's speaking in a case where we need identification of who the bechar is. Why do we need it? If this family grew up here, we know who the first child is. We don't need his name on this. Everybody knows who's the oldest child. But here you have someone who came with a whole bunch of children, and we don't know who the bechar is. So there we need the father to identify the bechar. That's why it says yakir, and the yakir is taka just for the bechara. It's not for any yuchsin type of issues. So Dr. Gemara, why do I need to identify who the bechar is? I don't need a special namanus that the Torah gives me to identify which one of my children get pishnayim. I should have an amanus without the Torah giving me a special amanus because I have a migu. Migu di boy misvele matana. Mila yahavalei. I could have right now distributed menachasim, given this child pishnayim. So migu that I could have done that. Shouldn't I be believed as well to say it's a bechar? Because I could do it anyway. Zokt Gemara, no, because that migu wouldn't help you. Benachasim shenaflu milachmike. Right now, I could say, I'm giving you pishnayim of everything that I have. But I can't give you something that I might acquire later in life. So for that, you need the namonis of a bechar. Why can't I give you something that I'm going to get later in life? Why can't I be makna you a davar shaloi b'lo'ilam? So I should have a migui that even anything that I'm going to acquire between now and my death, I also can give you as a matana right now. So I have the migui to be believed that you're a bechar. Why do I need a special namonis of Torah? If he received something when he was a goises, when someone's a goises, they cannot give him a ton. And therefore, in order that he should get pishnayim of things that this person will get when he's a goises, for that you need an amonis. And there's a long toises here that asks a goises can for sure give a matana. And the goises, because Tosh brings rise, a goises can give a get. So Tosh says it just means if he lost his speech. When he's that sick and old that he lost his speech where he couldn't give him matana, that's what we need the namonos for. So the question is, just because you see somebody has an namonos, a father has an namonos, to identify who the son of the bechor is, the gabi nechasim, how did that give him a right to patzal him because of mamzeris? So Tosfos just a couple of days ago told us how you know that. So Tosfos on Daf Ayin Daled Amud Aleph speaks about that. Shem she'adam neman loimer zeh b'ni bechor. Who is Rabbi Yehuda? How do you see that in the pasuk? How the Neman Loimer Zabani ben Gerusha v'Chalutza Bishlama Zabani Bechar Lagabi giving him an advantage, saying that he gets pishnayim. Dinu sheyei Neman Olav. There, it's more understandable that he should be believed for. We shouldn't have a toiv levad. Levlad. It's good for the child, so they can't yitol pishnayim. Aval apois lemay Neman. Where do you see a zaschus that he can pass? That needs more of a before-shtik arrive from the Torah. The Shloimer, we have two options. Either the Hadin Neman Loimer Zeh B'ni Bechar. Imagine he's coming with a whole bunch of children from out of town. We never met him before. He's moving into the city, and he's going to identify who's a Bechar. What if the oldest child he doesn't identify as a Bechar? What if he identifies one of the younger children as a Bechar? What does that mean? The Neman Leimer Zebedi Bechor Mari B'Tinuk Ben Abanim. The Omer Al Katan Shebebanov. He points to this little kid. He's the Bechor. Those are not mine. So that means he's automatically making them into mamzerim. Afilu Hakin Neman V'Afagav Shal Yidei Shu Made Al Zeh Shu Bechor Maftik is Hagdoilim LeMamzerim. So you see that he's Neman to make even the child who seems to be from the younger ones of Bechor means he's believed to say that the other ones are not his children and they're mamzerim. Because they're not his kids and his wife gave birth to them. What?
From other marriage.
Well, it's even in a case where they're all his kids, is what Tosha seems to be saying. But for Ben Yilil Mefarish, down the time of the Neman, it's a little more subtle. And we learned snua means snua b'nisuel, right? Snua b'nisuel, koloimar shehi belav the koyakar atevayu yakar shu b'chor the yakar shu ben grusha v'chalutza. The snua b'nisuel. We already learned what does it mean snua b'nisuel? That she's a bed that the mother was a grusha and I wasn't allowed to marry her. I was a Kohen. Right? So therefore, and I'm still believed to say, this is the Bechar, this is the Ben Asnua. So you see, while I'm making him into a Bechar, I'm also making him into a Apostle of Yosy. So that's how Rabbi Yehuda says, from the Yakir Yakirenu of Bechira, you also, as a byproduct, learn that a father is Neman, the Apostle is children's Yichus. Okay, we'll stop here, and we will be Mamshach tomorrow.